Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of the Luna Defense Station, watching Earth slowly rotate in the distance. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from here, but Jake knew that peace might not last long. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept holding the cup anyway. It gave his hands something to do while his mind raced with worry. The Giba communication room behind him buzzed with activity. Dr. Lisa Carter had been working for 3 days straight to decode the strange message they received from deep space. No one had ever heard anything like it before. The signal was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, but it came from a part of the galaxy where no human had ever been. "Commander Morrison, please come quickly," Dr. Carter called from her workstation. Her voice carried excitement and fear in equal measure. Jake set down his cold coffee and walked over to where she sat surrounded by computer screens and audio equipment. "What have you found, Lisa?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was beating fast. Dr. Carter pointed to the main screen where waves of sound patterns moved up and down like mountains and valleys. "It's a language, sir." "Definitely a language, but it's not human. I've run it through every translation program we have and nothing matches. This is completely alien." Jake felt his stomach drop. For decades, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Scientists had searched the stars for any sign of intelligent life. Now it seemed they had found it or it had found them. "Can you understand any of it?" Jake asked. "Some parts, yes. I've been working with the computer to find patterns. The message repeats itself every few hours, which helps. I think they're trying very hard to make sure we understand." Dr. Carter switched to another screen that showed text translations. The basic meaning seems to be a request for help. "They're asking for aid." Jake read the translated words on the screen. Even through the computer translation, he could sense desperation in the message. "Help from who? From us?" "I think so, sir. The signal is aimed directly at our solar system. They know we're here, and they're asking us to help them with something terrible." Within hours, Jake had sent the message up the command chain to Earth. The response came back faster than he expected. Captain Ben Rodriguez would lead a first contact mission aboard the exploration ship New Horizon. Jake felt both relieved and worried. Ben was a good captain, but no human had ever talked to aliens before. 2 weeks later, Jake watched the New Horizon disappear into hyperspace, heading toward the source of the alien message. The next few days felt like the longest of his life. Every hour that passed without word from Captain Rodriguez made everyone more nervous. Then the reports started coming in. Captain Rodriguez had found them. The aliens called themselves Zaphirians, and their situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The New Horizon sent back images that made Jake's hands shake as he looked at them. The Zaphirian star system was full of refugee ships. Thousands of vessels of all sizes drifted in space around a dying world. Captain Rodriguez reported that the planet below had once been green and blue like Earth, but now it was brown and gray. Something had eaten everything living on its surface. "The Zaphirians are tall and thin," Captain Rodriguez said in his report. "They look fragile, but their technology is incredible. Their skin glows with different colors depending on how they feel. Right now, most of them glow with colors that seem to mean sadness and fear." Jake listened to every word as Captain Rodriguez described meeting with Kethara, the Zaphirian diplomatic leader. Through translation devices that worked much better than Dr. Carter's first attempts, the Zaphirians told their story. An enemy called the Devourers had come to their space several years ago. These Devourers were not like any normal life form. They were more like a disease that could think and plan. They consumed everything living on a planet, then moved on to the next world. They had already destroyed 12 Zaphirian colonies. "The Zaphirians are peaceful people," Captain Rodriguez explained. "They don't have weapons or armies. They never needed them before. When the Devourers came, all they could do was run away and watch their worlds die." Jake felt anger growing in his chest as he listened. The Zaphirians had done nothing wrong. They were just trying to live their lives in peace, and now some horrible enemy was destroying everything they had ever built. The most shocking part came next. The Zaphirians were not asking humans to fight for them. They knew humans were a young species with limited technology. They just wanted help moving their people to safety, maybe some food and medical supplies. They would be grateful for anything humans could spare. Dr. Lisa Carter had been listening to the reports too. "They don't expect us to fight, do they?" she asked Jake. "No," Jake replied. "They think we're too weak to stand against the Devourers. They just want us to help them run away." What do you think we should do? Jake looked out at Earth again. His homeworld looked so beautiful and alive. He tried to imagine what it would look like if the Devourers came here. Brown and gray and dead, with all the humans fleeing in ships, begging strangers for help, I think, Jake said slowly. That running away is not the human way of doing things. Back in the Zaphirian system, Captain Rodriguez was having long conversations with Cathara and the other Zaphirian leaders. The aliens were amazed that humans had traveled so far just to talk to them. No species had ever done that before. Most intelligent races in the galaxy minded their own business and stayed away from other people's problems. Dr. Amy Powell, the New Horizons science officer, worked with a Zaphirian scientist named Veltar to learn more about both species. She discovered that Zaphirians lived much longer than humans but had fewer children. They preferred to solve problems by thinking and talking rather than fighting. Their technology was based on working with natural energy, rather than against it. They're everything we're not, Dr. Powell reported to Captain Rodriguez. But in a good way. They could teach us so much about living in peace. And we could teach them about surviving when peace isn't enough, Captain Rodriguez replied. Engineer Paul Grant spent his time studying Zaphirian ships and equipment. What he found amazed him. The Zaphirians could manipulate energy in ways that seemed almost like magic. Their ships could travel faster than anything humans had ever built. Their communication systems could send messages across the entire galaxy in minutes. Captain, Paul said excitedly, if we could combine their technology with our engineering, we could build things neither of our species ever imagined. Captain Rodriguez nodded, but his mind was on bigger problems. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the edge of Zaphirian space where the Devourers waited. Long-range scans showed massive swarms of alien ships that moved like clouds of insects. Every few days, the swarms moved forward a little bit, consuming another asteroid or small moon and growing larger. The Zaphirians had shown him records of what happened when the Devourers attacked a world. First came small scout ships that tested the defenses, then larger vessels that landed on the surface and began consuming all plant and animal life. Within weeks, a living world became a dead rock, and the Devourers moved on to their next target. How long do you think we have? Captain Rodriguez asked Cathara during one of their meetings. The Zaphirian leader's skin flickered with dark blue patterns that meant deep worry. Perhaps 6 months before they reach our last major colony. Maybe less. They grow stronger with each world they consume. Captain Rodriguez looked at the star charts showing the positions of Earth and the Zaphirian colonies. If the Devourers continued expanding after finishing with the Zaphirians, they would eventually reach human space too. This was not just about helping friendly aliens. This was about the survival of all intelligent life in this part of the galaxy. Cathara, he said carefully, what if we offered to do more than just help you move your people? The aliens' bioluminescent patterns shifted to show confusion. I do not understand, Captain Rodriguez. What more could you do? You are brave to come this far, but your species is young. Your technology is limited. We would not ask you to sacrifice yourselves for us. Captain Rodriguez smiled, though he knew the Zaphirian couldn't interpret human facial expressions yet. You might be surprised what humans can do when someone asks us for help. Admiral Susan Kelly sat in the emergency meeting room deep inside the Pentagon, watching as world leaders appeared on screens around the table. The room had been built for crisis situations, but no one had ever imagined a crisis quite like this one. President Clark Harrison sat at the head of the table, his face serious as he read through Captain Rodriguez's latest reports from Zaphirian space. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, President Harrison said, looking around the room at the generals, scientists, and diplomats who had been called to this urgent meeting. We have made contact with a peaceful alien species. They are being hunted to extinction by another alien species that eats entire planets, and they have asked us for help moving their refugees to safety. That's correct, Mr. President, Admiral Kelly replied. The Zaphirians are not asking us to fight. They just want humanitarian aid, food, medicine, transport ships if we can spare them. General Rick Barnes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward in his chair. How much time do we have before these Devourers finish with the Zaphirians and potentially head toward Earth? According to our analysis, possibly 2 years if the Zaphirians can keep running. But if the Devourers consume all the remaining Zaphirian colonies, they will grow much stronger. When they expand beyond Zaphirian space, Earth could be in their path within a decade. Dr. Amy Powell appeared on one of the video screens, broadcasting from the New Horizon in Zaphirian space. Mr. President, I've been studying the Zaphirians for 2 weeks now. They're remarkable people. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas. But they have no concept of warfare. They've never needed to fight anyone before. What kind of technology are we talking about? Asked Dr. Lisa Carter, who had joined the meeting as the lead expert on alien communication. Energy manipulation beyond anything we've dreamed of, Dr. Powell replied. Their ships can travel 3 times faster than our best vessels. Their communication systems work instantly across vast distances. Their medical technology can heal injuries that would be permanent for us, but they've never used any of it as a weapon. President Harrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the reports in front of him. Finally, he looked up at the room full of advisors and military leaders. What are our options? We could provide the humanitarian aid they're asking for, said Secretary of State Margaret Cole. Send them food, medical supplies, maybe some transport ships. It would be expensive, but we could do it. That would help some of their refugees, Admiral Kelly said. But it wouldn't solve the real problem. The Devourers would still destroy their civilization and eventually threaten other species, possibly including us. General Barnes stood up and walked to the large screen showing star maps of human and Zaphirian space. Or we could treat this as what it really is. An invasion by a hostile alien force that threatens all intelligent life in this region of the galaxy. You're suggesting we go to war? President Harrison asked. I'm suggesting we defend our neighbors so we don't have to defend ourselves alone later, General Barnes replied. The Zaphirians have technology we need. We have military experience they need. Together we might be able to stop the Devourers. Dr. Carter shook her head. The Zaphirians are pacifists. They won't fight even to save themselves. How could we ask them to help us wage war? We don't ask them to fight, Admiral Kelly said, understanding starting to show in her voice. We ask them to support our fight. They provide the technology and intelligence. We provide the warriors. President Harrison turned to face the screen where Captain Rodriguez was attending the meeting from Zaphirian space. Ben, what's your assessment? Could this work? Captain Rodriguez had been listening quietly to the discussion. Mr. President, I've spent 2 weeks with these people. They're desperate, but they're also proud. They don't want to be rescued. They want to survive. If we offered them partnership instead of charity, I think they would accept. Partnership? President Harrison asked. Complete integration, Captain Rodriguez explained. We combine our species' strengths to fight a common enemy. They get to keep their pacifist beliefs because we handle all the fighting. We get access to their technology and knowledge of the Devourers. Both species survive and become stronger. Over the next several hours, the meeting turned into a planning session. Military experts worked with scientists to figure out how human and Zaphirian technology could be combined. Diplomats discussed how to present the offer to the Zaphirian leadership. Dr. Amy Powell provided crucial information from her work with the Zaphirian scientist Veltar. They're fascinated by human psychology, she reported. The concept of fighting to protect others is completely foreign to them, but they find it compelling. Veltar told me that Zaphirians have never encountered a species willing to risk their lives for strangers. That could work in our favor, said Admiral Kelly. If we can show them that we're sincere about this partnership, they might be willing to share everything they know. General Barnes had been making calculations on his tablet. We would need to completely restructure our military doctrine. Our current ships and weapons are designed for fighting other humans, not planet-eating aliens. But if the Zaphirians can upgrade our technology, we could build a fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. How long would that take? President Harrison asked. With traditional human manufacturing, 5 to 10 years. With Zaphirian energy manipulation technology, possibly 6 months to a year. The president looked around the room at all the serious faces staring back at him. Are we really talking about committing our entire civilization to a war against aliens we've never seen? To protect people we just met? Mr. President, Admiral Kelly said quietly, the alternative is waiting for the Devourers to finish with the Zaphirians and then come for us. At least this way, we're not facing them alone. President Harrison turned to Captain Rodriguez on the screen. Ben, I want you to make an offer to the Zaphirian leadership. Tell them that humanity proposes a complete military and technological alliance. We will integrate our species' capabilities and fight the Devourers together. Make it clear that we're not just offering to help them. We're offering to join them as equals in this fight. Yes, sir. What if they ask why we would do this? President Harrison smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Tell them it's because they asked for help and humans don't do anything halfway. 3 days later, Captain Rodriguez stood in the main council chamber of the largest Zaphirian refugee ship. Cathara and 12 other Zaphirian leaders sat in a circle around him, their skin patterns shifting through various colors as they tried to process what he had just told them. Let me understand, Cathara said. Her bioluminescent patches glowing with what Rodriguez had learned meant confusion. Your species is offering not just humanitarian aid but complete military alliance? That's correct, Rodriguez replied. We would combine our technologies, share our knowledge, and fight the Devourers together as equal partners. Another Zaphirian leader, an elderly male named Zephron, flickered with patterns that indicated deep thought. Captain Rodriguez, your species is young and your technology is limited compared to ours. Why would you risk everything for people you have just met? Rodriguez had expected this question. Because you asked for help. And because the Devourers threaten all intelligent life. If we don't stop them now while we have the chance, they may become unstoppable. But we are pacifists, Cathara said. We cannot fight even against the Devourers. We're not asking you to fight, Rodriguez explained. We're asking you to help us fight. You would provide technology, intelligence, medical support, and strategic planning. Humans would handle all direct combat operations. The Zaphirian leaders exchanged looks and rapid color changes that Rodriguez couldn't interpret. Finally, Veltar, the scientist who had been working with Dr. Powell, spoke up. This concept of fighting to protect others, Veltar said, it is unknown to us. Zaphirians have always believed that violence creates only more violence, but the Devourers have shown us that sometimes violence comes whether we choose it or not. Cathar's pattern shifted to show deep sadness. We have lost so much already. 12 worlds, billions of our people, thousands of years of culture and knowledge. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. What would this alliance look like in practical terms? Asked Zephron. Rodriguez activated his portable hologram projector, showing images that had been prepared by the Earth Command staff. Joint crews on all ships. Zaphirian technology specialists working with human tactical officers. Your medical teams treating both human and Zaphirian wounded. Your scientists working with our engineers to develop new weapons and defenses. And humans would truly be willing to die to protect Zaphirian civilians? Cathara asked. Yes, Rodriguez answered without hesitation. That's what soldiers do. We protect people who cannot protect themselves. The Zaphirian leaders were quiet for several minutes, communicating through color patterns too rapid and complex for Rodriguez to follow. Finally, Cathara spoke again. Captain Rodriguez, we accept your offer of alliance. We will share our technology and knowledge freely. In return, we ask only that you help us save what remains of our people. 6 months after the alliance agreement was signed, Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker stood on the bridge of the training vessel Defender, watching human and Zaphirian crew members work side by side. The integration process had been more challenging than anyone expected, but also more rewarding. Parker, we have incoming signals from the patrol ships, called out Sergeant Maria Lopez from the communications station. Next to her, a young Zaphirian named Kildar monitored the alien communication frequencies with equipment that still amazed the human crew members. What kind of signals? Parker asked, walking over to their station. Kildar's skin pattern shifted to show excitement mixed with concern. 3 of our patrol vessels have detected Devourer scouts near the outer rim. They are testing our defenses again. Parker nodded grimly. Over the past 6 months, the Devourers had sent small groups of ships to probe the edges of the Allied defensive perimeter. Each time, the joint human-Zaphirian forces had driven them back, but the enemy was clearly learning from each encounter. Send word to Admiral Kelly immediately, Parker ordered, and prepare the Defender for possible combat deployment. The bridge crew moved efficiently to follow his orders. Parker felt proud watching humans and Zaphirians working together so smoothly. It had not been easy at first. The two species thought differently, communicated differently, and had completely different approaches to problem solving. Dr. Lisa Carter had spent 3 months on the Zaphirian homeworld in exile, working with their linguists to create better translation systems. The breakthrough came when they realized that Zaphirians communicated as much through their color patterns as through their spoken words. New translation devices now converted both speech and bioluminescent signals, making communication much clearer. On Earth, the integration efforts were even more dramatic. Dr. Amy Powell led the joint research facility on Titan, where human and Zaphirian scientists worked around the clock to develop new technologies. The facility had grown from a small research station to a massive complex employing thousands of people from both species. The energy manipulation techniques are incredible, Dr. Powell had reported to Admiral Kelly just last week. The Zaphirians can take our basic weapon designs and increase their power by 300%. But more importantly, they're teaching us to think about energy as a living thing rather than just a tool. Engineer Paul Grant had become the leading expert on human Zaphirian technology integration. His team had successfully retrofitted 50 human ships with Zaphirian energy shields and propulsion systems. The hybrid vessels could travel faster and hit harder than anything either species had built separately. The amazing thing, Grant had explained to Captain Rodriguez, is how well our different approaches complement each other. Humans build things tough and practical. Zaphirians build things elegant and efficient. When you combine both philosophies, you get something that's both stronger and more beautiful. The first major test of the integrated technology came during a Devourer probe attack 2 months ago. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the Unity, the first fully integrated vessel with a mixed crew of humans and Zaphirians. The ship had responded to a distress call from a Zaphirian refugee convoy under attack. Parker remembered listening to the battle reports as they came in. The Devourers had sent 12 ships against the convoy, expecting an easy victory against defenseless refugees. Instead, they encountered the Unity with its hybrid weapons and mixed crew. The Devourer ships are unlike anything we've ever seen, Captain Brooks had reported during the battle. They move like living creatures, adapting their tactics in real time. But our Zaphirian crew members can predict their movements by analyzing their energy patterns. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. The Unity's human tactical officers used aggressive maneuvers that confused the Devourers, while the Zaphirian crew provided precise targeting data and managed the ship's energy systems. All 12 Devourer ships were destroyed with no losses to the convoy or the Unity, but the battle also revealed disturbing information about the enemy. The Devourers were learning faster than anyone expected. Each engagement with human Zaphirian forces taught them new tactics and strategies. Colonel Dan Phillips ran the Joint Ground Forces training program at Camp Unity in Colorado. Human soldiers learned to work with Zaphirian support specialists who could provide real-time intelligence and medical assistance. The Zaphirians, meanwhile, learned to understand human combat psychology and decision-making processes. The hardest part, Colonel Phillips explained to visiting officials, is helping both species understand each other's strengths. Humans think the Zaphirians are too gentle for combat. Zaphirians think humans are too violent. But when they work together, each species covers the other's weaknesses perfectly. The training exercises had become increasingly realistic as intelligence reports provided more information about Devourer tactics. The enemy used swarm attacks, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. They also employed biological weapons that could consume metal and organic materials alike. The Devourers don't just destroy planets, explained Veltar during a briefing at the research facility. They transform everything they touch into more of themselves. A single Devourer organism can consume an entire forest and turn it into thousands more Devourers. This information led to the development of new defensive technologies. Human engineers worked with Zaphirian biologists to create materials that the Devourers could not consume. The breakthrough came when they developed a hybrid metal energy matrix that actively repelled Devourer biological attacks. Dr. Carter had been working on the most important project of all, studying captured Devourer organisms to understand how they thought and communicated. The work was dangerous because even tiny pieces of Devourer tissue tried to consume everything around them. They're not really individuals, Dr. Carter reported to the Joint Command Staff. Each Devourer organism is part of a larger hive mind. They share information instantly across vast distances. When one Devourer learns something, they all learn it. This discovery explained why the Devourers adapted so quickly to human tactics. Every battle taught the entire species new information about their enemies. But there might be a weakness, Dr. Carter continued. If they're all connected, then disrupting the connections might disable large numbers of them at once. We're working on a way to jam their hive mind communications. The research was progressing, but time was running short. Intelligence reports showed the Devourers massing for a major offensive against the remaining Zaphirian stronghold worlds. Long-range sensors detected massive swarms of enemy ships gathering at the edge of Zaphirian space. Admiral Kelly called an emergency meeting of all senior commanders, both human and Zaphirian. The holographic conference room at Luna Station was crowded with officers from both species, their faces showing the strain of 6 months of intensive preparation. "The Devourers are moving faster than we expected," Admiral Kelly began. "Our intelligence suggests they will launch their main attack within 2 weeks. They're targeting Zephus Secondary, the largest remaining Zaphirian colony." Cathara, now serving as the Zaphirian military liaison, flickered with patterns that showed deep concern. "Zephus Secondary has over 2 billion civilians. We cannot evacuate them in time." "We're not going to evacuate them," Admiral Kelly replied firmly. "We're going to defend them. This is what we've been preparing for." Captain Rodriguez, recently promoted to Commodore and given command of the Joint Strike Force, studied the tactical displays showing enemy positions. "How many ships are we looking at?" "Conservative estimates suggest 3,000 Devourer vessels of various sizes," reported Colonel Phillips. "They've been building their numbers for months, consuming asteroids and small moons to create more ships. Our combined fleet has 800 ships," Admiral Kelly said. "But every one of our vessels is equipped with the latest hybrid technology. We're faster, better armed, and we have the advantage of 2 species working together." Veltar raised a question that had been troubling many of the Zaphirian officers. "What if we cannot win? What if the Devourers are too strong?" The room fell silent for a moment. Finally, Lieutenant Commander Parker spoke up. "Then we make them pay such a high price for victory that other species will have time to prepare. But I don't think we're going to lose. The Devourers have never fought anyone who fought back effectively. They're used to consuming helpless victims, not warriors who refuse to give up." Captain Brooks nodded in agreement. "The unity has proven that our integrated approach works. When humans and Zaphirians fight together, we're stronger than the sum of our parts." Admiral Kelly looked around the room at the mixed group of human and alien officers. 6 months ago, these 2 species had never met. Now they were preparing to fight side by side against an enemy that threatened all intelligent life. "The Devourers think they're hunting the last survivors of a dying civilization," Admiral Kelly said. "They're about to discover that they're facing something entirely new. A partnership between 2 species who refuse to let evil triumph." As the meeting ended and commanders returned to their ships to prepare for battle, Parker remained behind to speak with Admiral Kelly privately. "Admiral," he said, "do you really think we can win?" The warning sirens on Zephus Secondary began wailing at exactly 600 hours, their sound carrying across the planet's largest city, where 2 billion Zaphirians lived and worked. Admiral Susan Kelly stood in the command center of the orbital defense station, watching her tactical displays fill with red dots as Devourer ships poured into the system like a dark flood. "Long-range sensors show 3,000 enemy vessels and counting," reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were seeing. "They're coming from multiple directions, trying to surround the planet." Admiral Kelly activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Kelly. The Devourers have begun their main assault on Zephus Secondary. This is what we've prepared for. Remember your training, trust your allies, and show them what humans and Zaphirians can do together." Captain Ben Rodriguez launched his fighter squadron from the carrier Defiance, leading 200 of the fastest ships in the combined fleet. His pilots were a mix of humans and Zaphirians who had learned to work together so well that they could anticipate each other's moves in combat. "Rodriguez to all fighter squadrons," he announced as they accelerated toward the approaching enemy. "Stay in formation until we reach effective range. Zaphirian pilots handle navigation and targeting. Human pilots focus on tactics and weapon control. Let's show these Devourers what real teamwork looks like." The first wave of enemy ships reached the outer defense perimeter 20 minutes later. The Devourer vessels moved unlike anything the Allied forces had encountered before. They flowed through space like living creatures, shifting and adapting their formations constantly. Some were small and fast like insects. Others were massive and slow like giant sea creatures. All of them pulsed with dark energy that made human instruments malfunction. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the unity at the center of the defensive formation, coordinating between human tactical officers and Zaphirian specialists. "Brooks to Fleet Command," she reported as the first enemy ships came within weapons range. "Devourer formations are unlike anything in our simulations. They're not following standard military tactics. They're hunting like animals. All ships engage at will, Admiral Kelly ordered. Use everything we've learned about fighting them. The battle began with flashes of light as energy weapons fired across vast distances. Human ships used aggressive maneuvers to confuse the Devourers, while Zaphirian vessels provided precise targeting data and enhanced shields. The hybrid technology worked exactly as designed, allowing the Allied fleet to hit harder and move faster than either species could manage alone. But the Devourers had advantages too. Their ships seemed to repair themselves during battle, growing new weapons and armor from consumed wreckage. When one Devourer ship was destroyed, nearby vessels would absorb pieces of it and become stronger. Parker to Admiral Kelly came the voice of the tactical officer as he studied the enemy behavior patterns. The Devourers are learning from every exchange. Ships that survive our first attacks are already adapting their defenses against the same weapons. Then we don't give them time to adapt, Admiral Kelly replied. All ships increase attack frequency. Hit them fast and hard before they can adjust. Captain Rodriguez led his fighters in a series of hit-and-run attacks against the larger Devourer vessels. The small, fast ships could slip through the enemy's defenses and attack weak points that the Zaphirian sensors identified in real time. Rodriguez here, he reported during a brief break in the combat. The big Devourer ships have soft spots near their energy cores, but they're protecting those areas better now. They learned from our first few attacks. Dr. Amy Powell watched the battle from the research vessel Discovery, analyzing Devourer behavior and transmitting tactical updates to the combat fleet. What she saw both amazed and terrified her. Powell to Fleet Command, she announced urgently. The Devourers aren't just adapting their tactics. They're evolving their ship designs during the battle. I'm seeing vessels grow new weapons and defensive systems in real time. This revelation changed everything. The Allied forces were not just fighting an enemy that could learn new tactics. They were fighting an enemy that could physically transform itself to counter new threats. Colonel Dan Phillips led the ground defense forces on Zephus Secondary itself, preparing for the inevitable landing attempts. His mixed units of human soldiers and Zaphirian support, specialists had established defensive positions around the planet's major cities and spaceports. Phillips, to Orbital Command, he reported as enemy landing. Craft began penetrating the atmosphere. Devourer ground forces are touching down at multiple sites. These aren't normal soldiers. They look like living machines that change shape as they move. The first ground battles were unlike anything in human military history. Devourer ground forces flowed across the landscape like liquid metal, consuming everything in their path and using the absorbed material to create new weapons and vehicles. Human soldiers found that conventional tactics barely slowed them down. The enemy isn't just trying to defeat us, Colonel Phillips observed during a brief tactical meeting. They're trying to consume our equipment and learn from it. Every weapon they absorb teaches them how to build better defenses. But the human-Zaphirian partnership proved its value on the ground as well as in space. Zaphirian specialists could track Devourer movement patterns and predict where they would attack next. Human soldiers provided the aggressive tactics needed to disrupt enemy formations before they could adapt. Lieutenant Davis reporting, came the voice of a field commander from the front lines. We've discovered that rapid changes in tactics confuse the Devourers. If we keep switching our approach every few minutes, they can't adapt fast enough to counter us. Back in space, the battle had become a deadly game of evolution and counter-evolution. Every time the Allied forces developed a new tactic, the Devourers adapted to it within hours. But the human crews had something the enemy couldn't match: creativity and unpredictability. All ships, this is Admiral Kelly, she announced as the battle entered its second day. Stop following standard procedures. Start improvising. Make every attack different from the last one. Keep the Devourers guessing. Captain Brooks led a daring assault on one of the largest Devourer ships, using a combination of human courage and Zaphirian precision that the enemy had never encountered before. The Unity flew directly at the massive vessel, dodging its weapons fire through unpredictable course changes, then unleashed a concentrated barrage at point-blank range. Brooks to fleet, she reported as the enemy ship broke apart under her attack. Direct assault works if you don't give them time to analyze your approach. We need to stay aggressive and keep changing our methods. The turning point came when Dr. Powell made a crucial discovery about how the Devourers shared information between their ships. Kelly, I found something important, she announced urgently. The Devourers use quantum communication links to share tactical data instantly across their entire force. But if we can disrupt those links, each ship would have to learn independently. How do we disrupt them? Admiral Kelly asked. I'm working on it, Dr. Powell replied. But I'll need samples of their communication technology to understand how it works. This led to one of the most dangerous missions of the battle. Captain Rodriguez volunteered to lead a strike force directly into the heart of the Devourer formation to capture technology samples from their command ships. The mission required flying through the middle of 3,000 enemy vessels while avoiding their adaptive defenses. Rodriguez to fleet, he announced as his strike force prepared to launch. If we don't make it back, remember what we've learned. The Devourers can be beaten, but only if we work together and never stop changing our tactics. The strike force launched during the height of the space battle, using the chaos and confusion to mask their approach. Rodriguez led 20 of the fastest ships in the fleet through a maze of enemy fire, relying on Zaphirian navigation specialists to find safe paths through the Devourer formations. We're approaching the target, Rodriguez reported as his force neared a massive Devourer command ship. Beginning attack run now. The assault on the command ship was brief but intense. Rodriguez's fighters hit the enemy vessel with everything they had, creating enough damage for boarding teams to enter and steal samples of the Devourer communication equipment. Half of the strike force was lost in the attack, but they accomplished their mission. Dr. Powell worked frantically to analyze the captured technology while the battle continued around her. What she found was both encouraging and frightening. The Devourer hive mind is more complex than we thought, she reported to Admiral Kelly. But it has a weakness. If we can disrupt the primary communication node, the entire network might collapse. Where is this primary node? Admiral Kelly asked. According to this data, it's located on their main breeding world, the original planet they conquered when they first entered this region of space. Admiral Kelly realized what Dr. Powell was suggesting. To defeat the Devourers completely, they would need to attack their homeworld and destroy the central hive mind that controlled their entire species. 1 year after the first battle at Zephus Secondary, Admiral Susan Kelly stood on the command bridge of the flagship Determination, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for Operation Reclaim. Over 2,000 ships from both human and Zaphirian forces filled the space around them. Each vessel equipped with the most advanced hybrid technology either species had ever created. All fleet commanders, report ready for jump to hyperspace, announced Captain Helen Brooks from the Unity's position near the fleet's center. Her ship had become the symbol of human-Zaphirian cooperation, and she would lead the spearhead attack force into the heart of Devourer space. Admiral Kelly looked at the tactical displays showing their destination. Zephus Prime, the original Zaphirian homeworld, had been under Devourer control for over 2 years. Intelligence reports indicated the enemy had built their primary hive complex there, using the planet as a breeding ground for new Devourer organisms. If they could destroy the main hive, the disruption might cascade through the entire Devourer network. Dr. Powell, status report on the hive disruption weapon, Admiral Kelly requested. Dr. Amy Powell appeared on the communication screen from her position aboard the research vessel Discovery. Behind her, teams of human and Zaphirian scientists made final adjustments to their breakthrough weapon. The device is ready, Admiral. But I must remind you, deployment requires getting within 5 kilometers of the primary hive structure. Any ship that close will face concentrated fire from thousands of Devourer defenders. Understood, Doctor. That's why we're all going together. The year since the victory at Zephus Secondary had been filled with smaller battles as the combined forces gradually pushed the Devourers back toward their main strongholds. Each engagement taught both sides new lessons. The humans learned that Devourers could adapt their tactics within hours of encountering new strategies. The Devourers learned that humans never fought the same way twice, and that Zaphirian technology made their enemies stronger with each passing month. Colonel Dan Phillips commanded the ground assault forces aboard the massive transport ship Liberation. His mixed units of human soldiers and Zaphirian support specialists had trained for this moment for months. They would need to establish landing zones on Zephus Prime itself and fight through Devourer-infected terrain to reach the hive. Structures, Colonel Phillips reporting, came his voice over the communication system. Ground forces are prepared for planetary assault. We have 40,000 human troops and 20,000 Zaphirian specialists ready for deployment. Remember, Admiral Kelly announced to the entire fleet, this is not just about destroying the enemy. We're taking back the Zaphirian homeworld. Every piece of ground we capture, every building we clear, we're giving back to our allies. Commodore Ben Rodriguez commanded the escort squadrons that would protect the weapon deployment ships. His fighters were the fastest and most maneuverable vessels in the fleet, crewed by pilots who had learned to think like both humans and Zaphirians during combat. "Rodriguez here," he reported. "Fighter squadrons are ready. We'll clear a path through the Devourer defenses and keep them off the weapon ships no matter what it takes." Admiral Kelly nodded to her communications officer. "All ships, this is Admiral Kelly. Begin Operation Reclaim. Jump to hyperspace in 3, 2, 1 mark." The entire fleet disappeared from normal space in a brilliant flash of light, heading toward the Zaphirian homeworld and the largest battle in galactic history. When they emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephus prime system, the scope of the Devourer presence became clear. The planet that had once been a beautiful garden world like Earth was now a brown and black sphere covered in massive hive structures. Thousands of Devourer ships of all sizes patrolled the space around it, while more vessels continued to emerge from construction facilities on the planet's surface. "Devourer forces are moving to intercept," reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker from his position on the Determination's tactical station. "I'm counting over 5,000 enemy vessels, with more launching every minute." "All ships engage at will," Admiral Kelly ordered. "Operation Reclaim is now active." The battle began immediately as Devourer swarms rushed toward the human Zaphirian fleet. But this time, the Allied forces were ready for everything the enemy could throw at them. Human tactical officers coordinated attacks while Zaphirian specialists managed energy systems and provided precise targeting data. The hybrid technology allowed their ships to hit harder and move faster than anything the Devourers had encountered before. Captain Brooks led her spearhead force directly toward the planet, fighting through wave after wave of enemy ships. The Unity's weapons, powered by Zaphirian energy manipulation technology, cut through Devourer vessels like they were made of paper. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Brooks to Admiral Kelly," came her voice over the communication system, strained from the intensity of combat. "We're taking heavy casualties, but we're breaking through their outer defenses. The weapon deployment ships should be able to reach the planet." Dr. Powell's research vessel Discovery was one of 3 ships carrying the hive disruption weapons. Protected by squadrons of fighters led by Commodore Rodriguez, they fought their way through the Devourer defenses toward the planet's surface. The weapons had to be deployed at close range to be effective, which meant flying directly into the heart of enemy territory. "Dr. Powell to Fleet Command," she reported, as her ship shook from enemy fire. "We're approaching the deployment zone, but the Devourer defenses are incredible. They know what we're trying to do." "Rodriguez here," came the Commodore's voice. "My fighters will clear you a path. Just get those weapons to the target." Admiral Kelly watched the tactical displays as the battle raged around the planet. Human and Zaphirian ships fought side by side against overwhelming odds, but they were holding together. The coordination between the 2 species had become perfect after a year of combat experience. "Admiral," called Parker from his station, "Commander Morrison is requesting permission to lead the final assault on the primary hive." Admiral Kelly felt her heart sink. Commander Jake Morrison had volunteered to lead the most dangerous part of the mission. The final assault team would need to fly directly into the main hive complex to ensure the weapons were properly deployed. It was almost certainly a suicide mission. "Permission granted," she said quietly. "Tell Morrison that humanity is proud of him." Commander Morrison led a squadron of 12 ships toward the massive hive structure at the planet's north pole. The building was larger than most human cities, pulsing with dark energy and defended by hundreds of Devourer vessels. Morrison's team fought through the defenses, losing ship after ship but refusing to give up. "Morrison to Fleet," came his voice over the radio as his damaged ship approached the hive. "We're going in. Whatever happens, don't let the Devourers win." The hive disruption weapon detonated deep inside the primary structure, sending waves of energy cascading through the Devourer network. Across the planet, secondary hives began to shut down as the disruption spread through their communication links. In space, Devourer ships suddenly stopped coordinating their attacks and began acting confused and disorganized. "It's working," Dr. Powell reported excitedly. "The hive mind is collapsing. Devourer forces throughout the system are losing coordination." But Morrison and his team did not survive the weapon deployment. Their sacrifice had broken the back of the Devourer network, but at a terrible cost. Colonel Phillips led the ground assault as soon as the planetary defenses weakened. Human soldiers and Zaphirian specialists landed on the surface of Zephus Prime and began the long process of clearing out the remaining devourer organisms. The work was dangerous and difficult, but for the first time in years, Zaphirians were setting foot on their homeworld again. "Phillips to Fleet Command," he reported as his forces secured the first landing zone. "The surface is heavily contaminated, but we're making progress. Zaphirian specialists are already working to reverse the biological damage." The battle continued for 3 more days, as Allied forces systematically destroyed devourer installations throughout the system. Without their hive mind coordination, the enemy could not mount effective resistance. Ships that had fought with terrifying intelligence now acted like confused animals, easy prey for the coordinated human Zaphirian forces. When the last devourer ship was destroyed, Admiral Kelly stood on the bridge of the Determination and looked down at Zephus Prime. The planet was damaged, but it was alive again. Zaphirian ships were already landing on the surface, bringing supplies and equipment to begin the restoration process. "Admiral Kelly to all ships," she announced. "Operation Reclaim is complete. The Zaphirian homeworld is free." 6 months later, Admiral Kelly attended the founding ceremony of the Galactic Protection Alliance on the restored surface of Zephus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species had come to join the organization, having heard about the human Zaphirian victory over the Devourers. President Harrison and Cathera stood together at the podium, addressing delegates from across the galaxy. "The alliance between humans and Zaphirians has proven that different species can work together to face common threats," President Harrison said.